Good morning everyone. My name is Deepshika Kommana and today I'm going to present my internship project completed during my Webstack Academy internship. So during this internship I learned full stack web development using the MERN Stack. The main objective of this internship was to understand how web applications are developed from scratch and how different technologies work together. So for my internship project I developed a food ordering web application. uh, this application allows user to browse restaurants, view menus, and and add food add food items to the cart, place orders, and make online payments. So in today's presentation I will explain my internship experience, the project requirements, the technology used, and I'll also give you the implementation details, and I will demonstrate the whole project. So let's begin the presentation now. Like, uh, let me explain you the overview of my whole internship. So I would say that this internship provided me with full practical knowledge of full stack web development. So before starting this internship, I had basic knowledge of programming. During the internship, I learned how front-end and back-end technologies communicate with each other. And specifically, I learned React.js for building responsive, interfaces, and Node.js and Express.js for backend development, and also for the databases I also I stored in the MongoDB, and the APIs are for communication, to connect the both front end and back end. This is most important thing, right? And and how the user authentication is working and how database connectivity is being done, routing and API development and payment integration, and how the image storage is done. And I can say that apart from coding I learned debugging, how the project structure, and like version control concepts, and how these real world applications are organized. And this internship improved both my technical skills and my confidence in developing the web applications, like full stack web development. So I can say that. So I think I explained the internship overview, and let me go to the goals of my internship. So the main goal of the internship, like first the main goal, that is to understand, to learn, or to make this project, to understand the full stack web development. So instead of learning only the front end and front end separately and back end separately, I learned how these both worked together. This is most important in the full stack web development, right? Creating the back end or creating the front end isn't that, but we need to able to connect it, and that is how the full stack web development works. So I learned how both work together in one application specifically. Second, to learn the MERN stack, we already know to learn the MERN stack. MERN stands for MongoDB for M, Express.js for E, React.js for R, and Node.js for N. So these technology widely used in industry for developing scalable web applications actually, and to develop the real world application. Third is to develop the real world application. So rather than building small examples, I learned or I worked on a complete food ordering system that includes user authentication, restaurant management, menus, card functionality, and the payment things also. Right, this is the main goal, right? So the food ordering system, it totally consists of menu authentication and how we are managing the restaurants and how the payment mode is done. So here I can say rather than building small examples, I worked on whole system, so which brought me even more confidence in me to do the you know to improvise my development skills, and also to make this clearer, right? And that is what I want to say. And I and I forgot to say the another goal. And the another goal, I would say that it increased, like it improvised my logical thinking, and it helped my problem solving skills. While developing the project, I got several errors, I encountered several errors related to the database connections, APIs, packages and dependencies and etc. So solving these issues, solving these issues helped me improvise my debugging skills actually. So I can say that the overall experience was too good, to improvise my skills, to improvise my development, debugging skills, and my problem solving skills, and it also improved my logical thinking skills, I would say that. So overall, the internship, successfully achieved all its objectives. I can say that clearly. So let me go to the project overview. So the main, my project is a food ordering web application. I already said you. So, nowadays, like, many people prefer ordering food online instead of visiting restaurants. Like, yes, in every situation, visiting restaurants wouldn't be the best choice. Sometimes we prefer ordering food, which helps us, you know, to save our time, or if we don't have time to visit the restaurants, or ordering food is normal these days. So I can say that. So this application provides a convenient platform where users can browse restaurants, to know which restaurant to select, or which food tastes good. We can go with our choices by browsing the restaurants, and to select the food items, and to place the orders, and to complete the payments online. We can complete it online. And the main features of the application, I would say, it include user registration, login. And first let us think about the user registration. So users can create their own accounts by providing their personal details, and user login. So user login, so the registered users can log in. So the registered users can securely log in using the the email and password, etc., right? That is how we log in into apps. And restaurants. So restaurants, like I already said you before, sorry, I already said you before, users can browse different restaurants. This is what I said. So we can browse the restaurants available and menu display. And each restaurant, each restaurant contains multiple food categories, food items with images, descriptions, and prices. And the main thing, shopping cart also, like users can add multiple food items into their cart before placing an order. So cart is the most important thing, not only in food ordering apps, but also in e-commerce websites, like Flipkart, Amazon, and etc. Cart plays a major role. Like physically cart exists, so online also we keep a cart option where our liked options can be putted into that cart, right? Like for to carry all the items at one place. So that is how the shopping cart works. And checkout process, like users can review their selected items and they can proceed to the payment and payment gateway. And the main important thing is the payment gateway, right? So strip payment integration is used for to secure online payments. And so overall application provides the complete food ordering experience. So the food ordering experience have all these things, right? And let me go to the technology stack. So this plays a major role. So this technology stack is the main base of the whole project. So the project works on this technology stack. It is too important, right? It is too important. So it is, I can say, the technology stack is the backbone of the whole project. So if the project is running perfectly, if it is giving the good output, if these options are getting visible, then that main credit goes to the technology stack. So the project is mainly developed using the MERN stack, right? The first technology I can say is React.js. So React.js is a JavaScript library actually, and I can say it is used for to interact the user interface, like to make the interactive, and what do we say, to responsive user interfaces. And React uses reusable components, you know by which the development becomes faster, and we can organize more. And second technology is Node.js. So it provides the environment, like runtime environment, for executing the JavaScript on server side. I can say that. So the third technology I can say is Express.js. So it is a framework. I can say the Express.js is not heavier. It is a lightweight one. It is lightweight framework built on top of Node.js that simplifies backend development and API creation. Right? And the fourth technology is MongoDB. And for anything I can say the database is the main important. So in the database, if the information of the restaurant exists, means only we can, when we search in the browse option the restaurant name, it will be visible. I can say that, right? So MongoDB is a new SQL like database used to store users, not only the restaurants. I explained the example of these restaurants, but it will store the details of the users, it will store the details of the restaurants, it will store the details of the food items, menus, and order details, right? So apart from these technologies, the project also has for secure authentication we'll be using like Strip API for online payment processing, Cloudinary for image storage, and Get for the version control, and VS Code for the developments, right? And see, I can say that the each technology, like I already said you before, the technology is the backbone of the whole project. So each technology plays an important role in building the in building the complete application, I can say. Okay. And if we go on to the wait, so I already explained you the technology stack, right? So for the all this project, to make this project true, we need the most important backbone is the technology stack. So I can again say that each technology plays a very important and vital role in building the application stepwise by using all these ones. It is too important. And let me go with the architecture. So the architecture goes as so the application follows three-layer architecture, I can say. So the first layer is the presentation layer. This is developed using React.js. So users interact. So the users will be interacting with these layer. I already said login and register. So sorry. So the users will interact with the React.js, such as login, restaurant list, cart, home page, etc. And the second layer would be the business logic layer. This layer is developed using Node.js and Express.js. So the business logic is being used, is being developed using these two, Node.js and Express.js. Okay, whenever users perform an action such as login in, or placing an order, or etc., the front end will be sending API request to the backend. The backend will process those requests, it will do some validations, and it will give the responses. If the responses are not accurate or appropriate, then I think there would be a problem in the code. But that is how the project will be running. The front end will send the API to the backend. It will send the requests to the backend. It will send the requests to the backend, and the backend will process those requests. It will process those API requests. So what do you mean by the API? API will, it is a thing that is given now. We can create it. Open API is, we should pay for the open API, but there are also free APIs available. I can say Gemini API is one of the free API, I can say. And so this API will say whether authentified user, it will act as a secure, I can say that. Each user will be given the each API, I can say. So the backend process those API requests, it will perform the validations, and it will send the responses. And the third layer would be known as the MongoDB. That is nothing but database layer. Database acts as the another backbone, because I can say, because the information is being stored in the database. So for building the whole project, information will be always, it will act as a key role. So here the database will be storing the application data. Application data, what would you consider as application data? We can say users, food items, restaurants, menus, orders, etc. So this architecture separates responsibilities and makes the application easier to maintain, I can say that. So So that is how the whole architecture of these web applications goes as. So let me go with the implementation. So the implementation phase involves several modules. So the first module will be user authentication. Authentication यानी user authentication. I can say that. So let me discuss. So implementation is nothing but we will I'll explain you. Implementation is nothing but we will first check the goals. We will first check the goals of our project. Next, we will see what are all the project needs. Next, we will collect all the technologies that it need. We will create one architecture using this project overview and technology used in it, and we will create one architecture for this app. And next, we gonna implement. So the implementation phase it will involve several modules. So the first module would be, I already said you, it is the user authentication. So where users can register and they can log in securely. So passwords are encrypted before storing them in the database. So end-to-end encrypted data it consists. So tokens. So tokens are used to maintain the user sessions. So they when we use the like if I take any AI agent like Claude, let us take an example of Claude. If we use till the time if the free session of the Claude completes, then it will ask tokens are completed. Either upgrade or come at this time, then it will reset. It will show like that. So tokens are used to maintain the user sessions, I can say that. Okay, the second module is the restaurant management. So restaurants information is being stored in the database. Okay, stored in MongoDB, I can say. So each restaurant contains multiple categories in food items. The third module is food management. Food items include name, description, image, price, ratings, because the food item should contain the rating. So that is when whether that food item is it has more demand or less demand, we can know now. So that is how the rating system works. So the rating system is the most important thing which will be useful to the customer. So the food items will include description, image, the name of the food item, the price the food item consists of, and the ratings that is given to that food item, or the ratings that is given to that kind of restaurant, and such kind of information. And the fourth module is shopping cart. So users can add or remove or update. I always said you about the cart. The shopping cart is the most important thing while we are ordering the food. So users can add the food item into the cart, they can remove the food item to the cart, or they can update the food quantities like +1, +2, etc. Right? So the fifth module, suppose if I want a chicken roll, I'll add +1. If my sister also adds in, then I'll add +2. So that is how the shopping cart works. And the fifth module, the most important phase, is payment. So if the payment happens, or if the payment is it is done only, then only the food will go now. So otherwise cash on delivery also they can keep. So leave it. The fifth module would be the payment. Strip checkout is integrated to process the payments. The payment should be very secured, right? So that is why we are using that. And at finally APIs connect all modules together. So each front-end request communicates with the backend API, and backend API will retrieve or update data from the MongoDB. So this is how it works. I already said front end will request the backend, and backend will retrieve the API, and it will retrieve the API or it will update from the MongoDB, right? Let me explain you the challenges that is faced. So during the project, I faced several challenges. Initially, like connecting MongoDB with backend was difficult. I also faced dependency issues because some packages required compatible versions of Node.js. Another challenge was, also um, connecting front end APIs with backend routes, like the main important work stands there, like connecting front end to the backend. That would be as such difficult as it I could see, because it was my internship process, so I learned much from this project, I can see. So I also encountered payment issues, like I already said the payment is the payment integration. While I was doing the payment integration also, I felt some issue, like and by carefully reading the documentation and debugging and testing the APIs, and I like that, self correction. I did the self correction, I could say. By doing the self correction, I did it, by carefully reading the documentation, debugging the code, and testing the API. I successfully solved those issues, and actually I could say that these challenges helped me much. They helped me improve my debugging and troubleshooting skills, actually, I would say. So that is how the challenges went on in this project, according to me. And I would think these challenges made me perfect in this project, like actually, yes. So that is how the project went on with those challenges. And let me explain you about my project demo. So now I'll demonstrate. I'll show you the home, login, restaurants, cart, and checkout. Let me just show you. 1 minute.